folks, welcome to today's video. Today we are taking a look at Path of Exile Sentinel and just get a bit of back and forth as to how people are thinking about the league. We'll break it down into, I guess, probably three main sections. We'll deal with like quality of life, Atlasy type stuff. We'll deal with like leveling, and then I guess we'll touch on some mechanics. I'm not going to keep this, I'm not going to make this super long. I'll just give you my rough thoughts. We'll see if we're on the same page. If we're not, let me know. So the game, if you've not played in quite a while, has ramped up in difficulty. There's this overarching vision that Chris Wilson, the main guy of the game, wants to have, and he wants to make the game a little bit tougher. I feel like he wants to make leveling a bit of an achievement that, hey, I got through the campaign, I made it, and a bit more of a, how would I word this, like a game. I get the sense from the decisions that have been made that if you were to just pick up Path of Exile as a free-to-play player, and the difficulty is ramping up as it is, you could say to your friends, hey, yeah, I played Path of Exile, I completed it, right? And completed it meaning you got through all of the acts. Whereas maybe a year or so, quite a few months ago, it was a little bit easy. You could blitz through it, and some people loved that. Some people loved that, and I did like it as well. But I think he's trying to make it more of a thing, like a hey, we got through this type of deal. I think I'm actually okay with the campaign being tougher. It's just how they do that difficulty is the key thing, obviously. The difficulty being more difficult is something I have enjoyed, and it has been something that you can share with your friends. Oh, how's your build tackling Mavail? Or how did you find the campaign leveling, you know? Some people might hate it, some people might love that, but I do think it makes the game a little bit more challenging. And let's not forget, this is just your first character. So experienced players, once they've like been through the campaign, you're gonna go into the campaign the next time with leveling gear, a bit of currency, and if you're struggling for damage and you say you're playing an axe build or whatever, you can purchase an axe, or you know, maybe you found one through your playthrough of solo self-found, and you keep that with you in your stash tab and you bring it out next time you're leveling. So really it's only the first leveling that's a bit tough, and I think I'm okay with that. And before we jump into problems, because I know everyone likes to bash on Path of Exile, I'd like to just say that Path of Exile is an absolutely fantastic game, and I really like playing it. And there is some accusations that get thrown around like, oh, they don't test, they're lazy, and the game's awful, etc. And as somebody that's played a lot of other games, I know some people really only stick to POE. GGG give you so much content, and to have a big update every 3 months to look forward to is something that's not really done anywhere else. I came from a game called GGZII. That game got absolutely no updates. It's a AAA game. It was a paid game, and you might get a one line of patch notes every blooming year. Path of Exile gives you a ton of content. There's so much stuff to do. There's so many unique builds. I understand this league, there was no balance changes and there was no skill changes added. I think that's because they're focusing on POE 2. And I can forgive them for not doing any changes for a little while, let things settle. I'm actually okay with knowing that my build's going to work, and I would like a few more skills, but we all know that's coming. We all know that deep down there are more skills coming, and that's fine. So the leveling experience has got a bit more difficult, and I think I'm just about okay with that, because it's only the first one that's going to be difficult. Now there's the argument of that it's a bit too difficult. The rowers one-shot me, and I'm an experienced player that know what was about to happen, and I think some of the ramp is a little bit skewed, but I think as players get through it and we communicate, we can explain what is a little bit overtuned and what's not. I don't think that's unreasonable. The Atlas system has been changed, and the Atlas system has been one of the most enjoyable things, and it's the reason me and my friends have came back to the game. I haven't really played this much, this league. I've played for 1 day, 1 hours. So I've played for 1 day, 1 hours, and I've killed a Guardian. And I think that is pretty good, considering I think it took me 8 or 9 hours to level. and I'm like level 88. And yeah, I'm an experienced player. I've gone through the system, but once you know how the system works, it's a lot quicker. You're not doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of maps and chasing influence around the area. You can also have an Atlas passive tree, so you can control what content appears, and now you can even block content, meaning I don't have to see an Abyss or a Breach or a Legion because my build doesn't function that well with them. But I can do some trials and get enhanced trials and expedition and metamorph and essences because I'm doing traps and I like to set everything and then blow them up, and that works quite well for me. Whereas previously, last league, I was doing Breach, Legion, all of these things because I was doing a lightning arrow chain build. And the way you can control the Atlas and the speed that you can get through the Atlas and the clarity of like Maven orbs and the bits and bobs that have now been added to the game, like your daily missions you can see, all that stuff, right, I think is great. I think the Atlas is in a good spot. I think we can all agree that the Atlas is pretty damn good. The big issue when it comes to the actual Sentinel League for me is the spike in difficulty. So we spoke about how I don't mind the campaign being a little bit more difficult. I think that's fair. The problem is where it spikes and how it spikes, because at the moment, because they've buffed up Act 1, because you have no gear and you're a new player, Act 1 is probably more difficult than like than all the way to Act 4. So if you're a brand new player and you get smashed, that might turn you off the game. I think it should really introduce you to Act 1 and then begin to ramp up. I think having the ramp right at the beginning is a mistake from a development standpoint. I think if I personally was to do it, I would do it back to front, meaning Act 10 is the first one we revamp, because the people that get to Act 10 sort of know what they're doing, and we're not going to turn anybody away if it's slightly overtuned. But, you know, that's just my opinion. So, the Sentinels themselves and the Sentinel League is basically like an orb that flies around and you can buff up the rares. Now, the rares in the game have been changed into what we previously called Arch Nemesis sort of mobs. Now, Arch Nemesis mobs, I really didn't like. In fact, I didn't like Arch Nemesis so much, I didn't do the league mechanic the entire time, and it was probably my most played league in about 2 years because of the Atlas changes. And the reason I'm telling you this is if anyone's watching it, I want you to get my perspective. So I enjoyed all of the changes so much that last league, me and my friends came back after taking a good, you know, sabbatical for like a year, and we came back, really enjoyed it, and all really enjoyed playing it. However, we didn't enjoy the league mechanic. The reason was the stage 3 and 4 Arch Nemesis that you were building, it was kind of like a check. Your build could either do it or not. There was no outplay button, there was no dodging, or it was kind of like you can either kill this monster or you can't. And what they've now done is they've put all of those mods onto every rare, and the old rares have gone, and you now have a Sentinel which you can sort of buff up a pack. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Sentinel, to be honest. I think it's a bit boring. It's a bit finicky, the way you have to press F2, 3, and 4. I like the combinations you can get from crafting. I'm a bit worried that it's just going to be another league mechanic that gets put into the game that isn't quite necessary, when the resonators could maybe just drop without the Sentinels or something like that. I'm not sure. But that's by the by. I think the league mechanic is okay for what it is. I think it gives us some unique opportunities to craft gear. If your build can handle it, you can juice up your pack, you can get some extra currency, some extra rewards. It's all right. I don't hate it compared to, say, Arch Nemesis, which I didn't really enjoy. The issue is now that because the rares have been rebalanced with these mods, and there's a big long list of mods that are now available to look at, some of the combinations that are spawning are just too difficult. And I don't mean too difficult in the sense of like a Dark Souls. I mean, it's just the case of the guy moves too quick, he does too much damage, and unless you're unbelievably nuclear damage, you're going to struggle. And I'm playing a meta build, I'm playing a Seismic Trapper, and I'm struggling with some of these monsters. So if you're playing a slightly less meta build, you're slightly behind the curve. you can struggle. There's probably on screen a couple of clips that you've seen. These are from yellow tier maps, and they aren't Sentinel buffed, and they aren't on crazy map mods. And some of the things that I tried to kill just were unkillable. Some things one-shot you. And the issue is because there's so many areas of the game that have rares, meaning everywhere, the way they spawn can be a bit fucked, basically. Playing Harvest is the thing that you use to craft your gear. All the rares spawn next to each other, and they can just pounce on you and one-shot you, or chase you around the garden for ages, and you're just getting one-shot or corrupting blood or extra proj. And I dislike the way that one of the best crafting methods in the game, one of the ones that eliminates RNG for the most part, is tied behind these super rippy monsters that aren't telegraphed, that aren't clean, and I think that's my problem. I don't mind a bit of difficulty in a game. In fact, I will say this, I do sometimes enjoy the feeling of taking down a big essence or a big arch nemesis guy. The problem is, and I think we can all agree, that you don't really know what is about to pop out because the mods aren't readable, which is one of the reasons they made the change. They made the change because the old rare system was hard to tell what the basically the enemy was, and I agree. But the new system is just as difficult, if not more difficult, to tell what the enemy is, apart from a few specific ones like the Mana Siphon guy that has the blue aura. It's very difficult to tell what you're facing, and even some of the names are a bit confusing. For example, if I tell you a monster is steel infused, what does that tell you? That to me says this monster is going to be like tanky, right? It's going to be maybe do a lot of physical damage or something. What it actually does is it kind of shreds your own armor and your own physical damage reduction, can kind of just blow you out of the water. A lot of it is a bit confusing. Now, there's been nerfs. GGG have been pretty good at nerfing retroactively some of the rares, but I just think they're still way overtuned. The main reason I say they're overtuned is because they don't drop a lot of stuff. So you can create this hell monster, or the hell monster can just spawn and it drops nothing. I'm okay with arch nemesis monsters being in the game. If they pop up occasionally, you might have to dodge their CC, their frost wall, or their little entombing prism, or their toxic orbs that drop on death. I'm okay with that. If they're rare, they're tough, and then they drop some rewards, so it's like hey, there's an arch nemesis monster, I'll spend a little bit of extra time killing this thing. The problem is, for me, every single rare is becoming this monumental battle, and it can stack up with like Beyond, Delirium, Abyss. All of these things can stack up. They can be stood next to a shrine, and it can get too much even for someone that sort of knows what they're doing and is playing a pretty solid build. And I've found myself getting a little bit frustrated this league at the difficulty, not because I can't press the buttons, more I can't kill this guy. My character cannot kill this guy, and it's frustrating. Because I'm at a point where my gear for the current time of playing is very good, really. I would say compared to most people, my gear's not amazing, but I've got a couple of cold iron points, I've got a 6 link, I've got +1 physical skills, I've got capped rares, I've got my right flasks, and most people won't have that. And I'm struggling with some essences, not even Sentinel buffed, but some essences in like yellow maps, and even some white maps are becoming like, wow, this guy's not dying because of the combination. And I'm thinking, like, if you're a basic character and you get one of those Sentinels and you're in you get one of those rares, sorry, and you're in like just map tier 1, it could put you off the game forever, really. You could think, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not enjoying it, I'm being one shot, it's not enjoyable. So overall, the league mechanic itself is alright. The Atlas is great, there's tons of content in the game, and I'm enjoying Path of Exile. I think we can all just agree that at the moment, stuff is just not, I don't want to say not tested, but it's not thought about. Like, it's not it's not realistically thought about in the sense of like having all these arch nemesis guys pop out of a harvest in a low tier map. I remember the very first harvest I did, right? It was like a tier 2 map, and the guys all popped out, and I was pretty geared at this point. Absolutely one-shot me, and then hunted me around the map at light speed. And it's like the ramp needs to be more like, once you're in the tier 16s, hey, now you're getting all the big beefy arch nemesis rares and the damage and all of that. What we need to do is just change the curve a little bit. It's a little bit random, shall we say. Like going into a tier 1 map might be a complete doddle, or it could be a nightmare. Vice versa, a tier 16 might blitz through, and then the next map, it's got a certain combination of RNG stuff that's happened that makes it a nightmare. I did a map last night that took so long to get through. It was like Beyond Delirium, Abyss, it had a blight in there, and I didn't put anything on this map. I just put the map in the map device. It wasn't like my Atlas did this, or it was a completely POE generated map, and it was brutal. And then the next map I blitzed through in a second, and there needs to be some like curve, I would say, of the game slowly getting more and more difficult, rather than being like easy, 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 bang, here's this random thing that's going to one-shot you. But I'm enjoying the game. I am enjoying the game a lot. And I also think that people don't know how good they've got it with Path of Exile, coming from other games that don't do patches as often, that don't have as much content. Yeah, Path of Exile players have it very good. Not saying they're perfect, and I'm not saying there aren't issues, but they've been very good with communication. I don't think we need a hissy fit of like, this is the worst game ever, this game's ruined, or stuff like that. I think the curve's just a bit messed up at the moment, and the only like thing in the back of my mind that's maybe a bit concerning is, will this be going in Path of Exile 2? Because I'm not a big fan of the Arch Nemesis system, the rares, and it seems to be that we're currently beta testing for Path of Exile 2, which I'm honestly okay with, to be honest. It's a free game, there's tons of content, and if he wants to try one league with super overpowered rares and see how the community reacts, I'm fine with that, to be honest. At least the game's changing a little bit and it's a bit fresh. Yeah, it's a bit tough. Yeah, some monsters can be a bit frustrating, but sometimes it can be quite rewarding just killing the thing, even if nothing drops. So developers have to experiment with certain things, otherwise the game ain't going to change. You could say, oh, do it on a public test realm or all this stuff, but I'm okay with Chris or the team being like, all right, let's try really, really dangerous rares and see how the community reacts. Because we know it's going to get changed or tweaked because they're pretty good with that stuff. And that's all I've got to say. I'm going to go back and play some Path of Exile Sentinel myself. I've got a little guide if you want to follow my trap build that I've been following. I've got a little meme video that I made that did quite well on Reddit, I suppose. And yeah, that's all I've really got to say. For the people that might have stuck to the end that are regular viewers of my channel, just want to say welcome back. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm back. Everything's all right. Everything's sorted. Yeah. All right. Have a good one, boys. Enjoy the league. Let me know what you think.